Afflictions and porn addictions, and we are live. All right, and I am coughing. Super exciting topic that we're going to talk about today, cognitive distortions. If you join us live, great. All right. So, super excited to talk about this topic. Let me get comfortable here in my seat. Welcome to Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions. My name is Craig Pera. I'm your host. I'm the founder of the Mindful Habit System, a model, a tool, a system to sustain a great life, despite what we're going to talk about today. And what we're going to talk about today are cognitive distortions. And I'm going to talk about cognitive distortions from the guy perspective. And usually in my case, it's the guy addict. We're going to talk about some common cognitive distortions from his perspective. And I've had the incredible privilege of working with partners of sex addicts, my wife and I, over the course of the past decade. So we are going to talk about some common cognitive distortions there. And we're going to define what cognitive distortions are. But let me read the definition. Let me read the definition, and then we're going to get into different ones. Here we go. So, cognitive distortions are internal mental filters or biases that increase our misery, fuel our anxiety, and make us feel bad about ourselves. So, a cognitive distortion happens when you experience pain, conflict, and there's a defense mechanism. And that defense mechanism is a cognitive distortion. And just to give you a sense of what that might mean, black and white thinking. That is an example of a cognitive distortion. And we're going to go through some specific examples of them. So when you've got a couple who is struggling with sex addiction and porn addiction, one, I say, let's reframe that. Let's see if we can reframe that problem from a way that doesn't reinforce some of those cognitive distortions. And when you talk around sex and get into shame, and this is so activating, right? The shame is so activating for the men. From the partner's perspective, because he lies about watching porn, he doesn't love me. Another common, partner cognitive distortion. This is going to destroy me. So there's a deep wound, and men, you need to understand why she's experiencing that wound. And there are cognitive distortions on the partner side that may help you understand why he's doing what he's doing, because I know every single one of the clients that I've had the privilege to work with absolutely loved their wives and loved their families. And if a car was coming at them and given the choice, they would sacrifice themselves, and they lie about watching porn. Why? Because let's talk about some of those cognitive distortions. It's when reality shifts. And here's the thing about cognitive distortions. If you go online and you Google, which I recommend you do as much research as you can around cognitive distortions and research them, you're going to find that there's this biological defense mechanism reaction that happens when we are subject to stress. This is a response. This is part of the physiological response to stress. So if it's part of that physiological response, I'm saying be kind to yourselves. Acknowledge that deep wounds are being touched here. And let's see if by looking at some of these cognitive distortions, we can create some awareness around what might be deeper underneath the surface, what might be a more accurate reality in that he does not hold the same sexual values that I do, and has an incredible ability to compartmentalize and lies. So very different lens. And let me just highlight, I think at a very high level, that very different lens. And this isn't to make excuses, but I do hope this is helpful. So from the guy's perspective, if you really, really dig deep and cut through all of it, let's define this: lying, hiding about some aspect of your sexual expression, touching yourself, masturbating, looking at naked pictures, looking at magazines. It's not just the doing it, right? It's the hiding it that's the problem. And so from the guy perspective, you literally have the oldest and most impactful habit in his life, period, full stop. And I challenge everyone listening, and guys who are here or ladies, feel free to put it in the chat if you're joining me live. Name an older and more impactful habit. There's 2 criteria. And I know it's impactful because you're here listening to sex afflictions and porn addiction. So we've checked that impactful box. It's absolutely impactful. You're here. So we older and more impactful. And what my clients tell me time and time again, maybe we come up with something around eating, wiping, but it's hard to come up with an older and more impactful habit than him, the man, lying about some aspect of his sexual expression, right? Oldest and most impactful. From the partner's perspective, and men, it is so important to understand their perspective because their perspective is incredibly valid because that's their reality. From the partner's perspective, this is doing something to them. This means you do not love them. This means that they are not good enough. This means that they are unattractive. This means that the sanctity of the family is threatened. Very different biology, very different environment, very different culture, very different experience, very different training around sexuality. And before we even get to trauma, before we even get to the shame, the programming, so 2 very, very, very different realities in which this behavior is being experienced in the context of a relationship. So my goal is, I hope these cognitive distortions help people say, wait a minute, and there's something bigger going on here. Maybe when he reacts like that or when she reacts like that, I don't have to react like that because I know, right? This is touching a wound. You only get cognitive distortions when wounds are being touched. Conflict is inevitable. When there is conflict, a wound is touched. When a wound is touched, a part is awakened. For those of you who've been following along regarding the parts work that I think is so important. So that's when the cognitive distortions come. They come at that moment of conflict, automatic, instantaneous, boom, catastrophizing, boom, black or white thinking, boom, deep reaction. Why is it so fast? Why is it so quick? It is a finely tuned conditioned response to pain. That cognitive distortion is a defense mechanism. Let's go through some of them, shall we? And I see Iron. Marley, right, in the chat, he agrees with me. He can't think of any other habits that are older and more impactful than him hiding, sneaking, lying about some aspect of his sexual expression. Please, 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 you must understand that, because you have to solve the problem that you're trying to solve. You have to appreciate that reality. Little band-aids. Man, we're talking identity change, and that takes work, and that takes effort, and that takes kindness, and that takes self-love, and that takes learning how to respond to the cognitive distortions. That Be kind to yourself, men. I know it's not your fault when you react that way. I know there's a part that takes over, but let's get to some of the cognitive distortions. So here's one type of cognitive distortion is called catastrophizing. As I continue my study of cognitive distortions, have learned that that is something that I do. I don't always say it out loud, but certainly in my head, I'm catastrophizing. Most of the time catching it, but sometimes a little later than I like, if I'm being honest. So, and remember, these cognitive distortions are not places for shame or judgment, but are opportunities. And I know I'm like saying, turn that frown upside down, and I get it, but it's true. What else can they be? They're happening. They're automatic, right? Nothing. It's so hard for you to dull that reaction. Catastrophizing. This involves imagining the worst possible outcome, or believing that a situation is far worse than it actually is. For example, a spouse might think, this addiction will never get better, and our relationship is doomed. Now, is there truth regarding her fears? Of course there are. Of course there are. Of course there are. And is that lens, is that catastrophic lens, the lens that best helps you understand what's going on? And remember, a defense mechanism, a programmed, conditioned defense mechanism at the epicenter, that you dive into that cognitive distortion from in the moment to the depth work, that, why that reaction, that is a soul journey, brothers and sisters. That is a soul journey, understanding that why that automatic reaction. Oh, here's another one. Here's another one. And I want to say, we're going to do another podcast on cognitive distortions. We're going to do one on the big one, he doesn't love me, and oldest and most impactful habit, right? We're going to take those two polarized places, and I'm going to do a podcast on that. But this is an overview. This is an overview. Okay. Programmed responses, trained conditioned responses. Here is the other comment I hear from partners, and for every single one of them who's had the bravery to share their journey with me, this becomes a rallying cry, where they look back at that statement and say, that's the moment, but I'm destroyed. I'm devastated. I'll never be the same. And in those words are such deep pain, accurate pain, real pain, real pain. And what does not kill you must make you stronger. It must be or I hope, I pray that it becomes the beginning of your healing journey, because that's what's good for you. And as many a women in the program will say, him destroy me? No, not today. Not today. And exploring the source of that cognitive distortion and the depth of that wound through which his behavior is being experienced is a soul journey. But look how we just went from a common cognitive distortion, catastrophizing, and dove right into what is often a deep core wound. So pretty wild stuff. Here's the other one: overgeneralization. If he slips, he'll never change, right? This will always happen. And when you think of slips from the perspective of oldest and most impactful habit, and that slip is touching a deep core wound, it's very difficult for people to create honesty around that, because there's such an inflammatory response. The wound is so raw. But that's an example of a overgeneralization. Personalization. Here's another one: the spouse may blame themselves for the addiction or believe that they are the cause of their partner's behavior. Here's an example of a personalization, cognitive distortion. If I was more attractive or better in some way, my partner wouldn't need to look at porn. Can I, after taking a sip of water, look every woman out here who's listening to this podcast in my eyes? I can almost promise, and because everybody is different, I'll say many of you, some of you, will come to the realization, the sad realization, there's sadness in this realization, how little you were part of his decision making. I'm trying to choose my words carefully so as to not blame. But what I'm saying is, you're not present when he's compartmentalizing in that zone. In that zone, that's the problem, right? He's not thinking holistically. Tunnel vision, not part of the decision, not part of the factor. And I promise you, I've worked with men whose wives are models, who by all objective standards would be, it's not that. Now, there is always, issues to better ourselves, but I'm talking about the deeper, the catastrophic distortion that if I was better, he wouldn't need to do that. Mind reading. Who here is a mind reader? I do that. This involves believing that one knows the thoughts or intentions of others without any concrete evidence. I would submit that many of the partners that we work with have a boatload of evidence as to why their mind reading might be accurate, but they learn it still doesn't serve them long term. It contributes to a disconnect in the sense that, mind reading. Let's leave it at that before we get into explaining each one. But assuming intention is often a place to grow, and it is unhelpful to project those intentions because they're so often wrong. They're so often wrong because we've already got this cognitive distortion. If he loved me, he wouldn't do this. And every client that I've worked with loves his wife. And again, choice, them, me, gone, easy. We got life insurance. I will sacrifice myself for my family. And in so many ways, they've been good providers, good husbands. And not everybody, I'm obviously generalizing here, but if you had to analyze the factual accuracy of he doesn't love me, certainly he will say, and I connect deeply with this too, is that this is the best love I have. This is the best expression. And I am so sorry it wasn't adequate and it was insufficient. And I'm going to make it better. But it is their family that drives them to be well. It is their family and their love for their wife that wants them to be healthy. And this is the oldest and most impactful habit in their lives. And It's tough. Let's get back to cognitive distortions. Should statements, right? He should be able to control it. I should react a certain way. I should do this. I shouldn't do that. Here's the thing about should statements, because I'm all about accountability. And sometimes, like, wait a minute, should statements really is because there's rooted in truth, right? I should build more muscle. I should exercise more. Fact. But woven into that definition is a judgment, is a value judgment. So unhealthy. We know by now negative thinking is always unhealthy. Always. Is there ever a point where it's not unhealthy all the time? We know that it changes our genes, epigenetics. Looking it up. Can negative thinking change my genes? Yes, it can. And that negative thinking, like these cognitive distortions, are so deeply entrenched, black and white thinking. If he loves porn more than me, our entire relationship has been a lie. And I get that. I get that. And men, you have hidden a lot. You did not share that this was the oldest and most impactful habit. You did not share that this is how you express this part of yourself. You did not share that, sorry, this has become my coping strategy. Like, this is literally my primary means to deal with stress. And here's the problem. It works really well, but it has costs, intimacy costs, connection costs, right? Self-esteem costs, right? And those and cognitive distortions manifest around those costs. Sometimes a partner might label their addicted partner as a pervert or a loser, which can erode empathy and understanding, and really take away avenues to understand why someone that she loves, someone that she's decided to have children with and has lived with, has this problem. What? Not an excuse, but an understanding, that helps expose, that helps understand his cognitive distortions. And men, listen, this isn't, because oldest and most impactful habit, I want to be abundantly clear. Your journey is understanding exactly where she's coming from. And because you can't give what you don't have. You have to connect with that pain first. Why the walls? Why the disconnect? Why the cognitive distortions? Why the intimacy disorder? Why the shame? Okay, what system am I going to do to counter that? And understanding where those cognitive distortions manifest. It's like it's where it's an inflammatory reaction, right? It's where, okay, ouch, when I hit my M there, why does that hurt? And there's a reason for it. Here is another common cognitive distortion that we all do. This is human nature. We are wired to focus on the negative. It's my understanding that for evolutionary reasons, men are more wired to be problem-centric. I don't know if that's actually true. I think it is. Let me know what you find, okay? And I'll correct it if not. But nonetheless, we have a tendency to focus on the negative to survive. Right? Back in the days in the savannah, problem. Not addressing that problem meant life or death. These cognitive distortions are the physiology of fear, of a defense mechanism triggered into action. And one thing that is so common for the man, for his partner, is discounting the positive. Discounting the positive. For example, you can have a brother who's had, let's say, 60 days of taking great care of himself and not doing the thing and stumble, and all that 60 days disappears. And that 60 days was the best he's ever done in his entire life on the two criteria, not just the break a habit part, but the make a habit part. And that's how discounting the positive and not addressing that deep core wound that this betrayal trauma sits on top of. So just another example of a cognitive distortion. All right, quick drink of water there. What's up, guys? Welcome, everybody. So, cognitive distortions, automatic biological reactions. How would you respond if someone coughed? So there's an opportunity here to understand this and say, hey, these are my cognitive distortions. These are my cognitive distortions. Let's bring kindness to when we are having those cognitive distortions, and things will be so much better. Healing, whether you're moving towards each other or moving away from each other. Those cognitive distortions can become calls to action. Become calls to action. And I invite you to believe that they must become calls to action. If you're going to be successful, when you are, the system that you create has to have at a minimum a protocol to address the distress that it will occur. Right? What are you going to do when you are distressed? Not only do you know when you're distressed, not only do you know in what circumstances do you get most distressed, you know what happens when you're distressed. You're aware of the cognitive distortion. So that cognitive distortion becomes a call to action. It's a recognition that a wound has been touched. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Viktor Frankl, originally attached to him from his book Man's Search for Meaning, later to Stephen Covey. I think there's some disagreement who actually said it, but a great quote. So that cognitive distortion becomes the awakening, becomes the moment. Let's go through a couple of cognitive distortions from his perspective, and in another perspective, I want to address the big ones. I want to do it right, and I want to make sure that I am unambiguously, unequivocally not making excuses for his behavior, but explaining it. There are reasons why. And listen, on your journey, man, whatever path you're on, I think you should be able to explain why you were able to lie. Where'd that capacity come from? How were you trained to compartmentalize? Why was that the default? Don't tell, hide, sneak. How was that system built? You're going to need that data to build a new one. You're going to know your blind spots. You're going to know your cognitive distortions. Here's a few cognitive distortions for the men, and then we are going to wrap up. All right, minimizations. It's just porn. Just a few minutes. Doesn't matter. Either it's one of the most powerful forces in the universe, or it doesn't matter. Which is it? Rationalization. Everyone does it. It's natural and part of male biology. Maybe that visual stimulation is exactly the way nature intended it to be. Maybe this is normal. Everyone else thinks so. maybe, or maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe this is a gross, twisted distortion of a generation of men losing that power to companies who don't give a rat's ass under the ruse of healthy sexuality while people are suffering. And I'm not judging the people who watch. That's not what that is. That's not what this statement is. Heck no. To each their own. We don't judge here. A mindful habit does not judge. And this is a crisis. A few more cognitive distortions. Overgeneralization. I relapsed once. This means I will never get better. Personalization. My partner is cold towards me. It's because I'm not satisfying her, because I'm a bad person, because I'm not good enough. It's because she's thinking about something I did. And I know there are no doubts, men, that there are times when that is exactly what it is. So make sure you ask. If you see something, say something. Apply that rule to your relationship. If she's off, if something might be wrong, lead, reach out, connect. Hey, is everything okay? And ask. I did a personalization. I was eating chips. Michelle had this look on her face. She's across the table. She's looking at me. And I'm like, oh, crap. I ate the kids' lunch again. Or these were Trey's special pretzels. And I was supposed to eat the other pretzels. I got this whole story in my mind. And I realized I don't keep that inside. Hey, crazy here, but are you thinking anything about the pretzels? What? No. Is it okay? Your mind? Is it okay if I have some? What? What? Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? But that's a cognitive distortion. And so learning when you have them becomes the awakening. Oh, here's another one, catastrophizing. If anyone finds out, my life will be ruined. I am sorry, brother. This is every man's battle. Okay. There is a study, a self-reported study, that 63% of ministers, the youth ones, 50-something% of regular ministers report struggling with pornography. Can you think about that for a second? Self-report 53%. And these are all good people. I've worked with some of these men. They can't tell anybody. They tell anybody you could lose the house. There's a bunch of board of directors in the back room there, making all these decisions who haven't contributed a peep to the institutions helping their flock create healthy sexuality beyond saying, don't do it. They can't. They're trapped. They're trapped. They're trapped. So chances are you sharing it with someone who you care about, the reaction might be, me too, or I know somebody. That's probably almost a given, okay? So let me look at the chat here. Awesome. So listen, thanks everybody. If you get value from this content, you can like, subscribe, follow on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, LinkedIn, and X, which is an absolutely stupid idea. And I've really stayed off Twitter because it's turned into a cesspool for my account. So, if you happen to follow me there, and listen, all these social media platforms, man, either we're using them or they're using us. Okay, that's the question you have to ask yourself every day. Am I using it? Am I using it for entertainment? Be entertained. Am I using it for great ideas on where to go and what to do? Am I using it to grow? Have I trained the algorithm to give myself a 15-minute punch in the face of motivation, growth, inspiration? Or is it a cesspool of thirst-trapped garbage and junk? So just be intentional. Be intentional. Ask, and listen, this is everybody. I don't mean to single out the guys, right? Because we're all struggling with technology. But am I using it or is it using me? And I got to tell you, if you go to Best Buy, I want you to go look at the quote unquote dumb phone section, and you are going to see it's getting bigger and bigger. There are more people entering that marketplace. And do you know why? Well, obviously this issue, yes, but also because the people who are doing it are saying, I'm reporting a better life. The freedom from not having that thing attached to your body is very liberating. So do what you have to do. And if that means getting a smartphone, which they call dumb phones, but we're going to call smartphones, do it. Life is too short to stink, my friends. All right, looking at the chat here. Oh, you're welcome, guys. Thank you so much. Peace and love, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to yourselves. Love yourselves. I know how hard you're trying, and if you need to try harder and you need to reach out to The Mindful Habit, visit the website, themindfulhabit.com. Click the link down below, and my team will share with you our different programs. And if you go online and sign up online, if you use the coupon code podcast, you get, I think, 36% off my core training program, which includes a weekly webinar, access to me, and the entire Mindful Habit system, okay? If you're at that place, check it out. 30 days to try it out. Unconditional money return policy too, all right? All right, everybody, make it great. Bye.